Live on Odyssey and Rumble.
Right. Okay. So I had to click the thing on YouTube. Apparently it wasn't live. Look, this is all part of the process, bros, right? Like this is what we do. You know what they say, the first pancake is always a bit retarded. So this is the retarded pancake stream. So anyway, as I was saying, right, Hebrew was basically lost for like a while. Then the Masoretes sort of reconstructed it. They made a sort of new version of Hebrew, because one of the things, of course, about Hebrew is that it doesn't have any vowels in it. And the reason why this is important, obviously, is that without vowels, you've got sort of no idea, like, precisely what word you're talking about. The Masoretes invented like these sort of like dot characters in Hebrew that you can use for the vowels. But the problem, of course, is that when you're trying to reconstruct a dead language without vowels, there's a lot of disputation as to what the words exactly mean. One of the sort of big problems that plagued medieval Christianity and sort of like leading up to what happened with Luther and the Reformation was that the Christians started listening to the rabbis, and the rabbis are like, hey, actually, you should really come to us to learn about Christianity. This is a mistake. Christians should not be going to like the Muslims or the Hindus, or the Jews or anyone else to explain what Christianity was. And as I was saying, the Masoretic text, which is what it wound up being called, this version of the Hebrew Bible, differed in subtle but significant ways from the Septuagint, which then had knock-on effects for Christianity. I'll probably do like a whole episode of that. Basically, Stone Choir covered this in excruciating detail. But if you don't have like 9 hours of pure theological autism to get into that, I'll probably do like a compressed sort of like thing. So we are. That's anti-citrus. Yes. Well, look, I mean, look, it is always hard for a Gentile to understand Jewish history. They'll basically say, oh, well, you don't speak Hebrew. You don't understand the full context. Well, look, a Gentile, you just got to do the best that you can, because otherwise you're basically in a situation where you're relying on the people who are, let's put it mildly, are known for massaging their history to tell you about that history. And that's always, a bit problematic, so you just got to do the best you can. There is a lot more sort of stuff on European history. I'll probably start with the birth of the origins of the Ashkenaz, which, excuse me, seems to be in Khazaria, is what is now Ukraine, sort of like the north of the southern part of Ukraine, northern part of Turkey. That in of itself is a fascinating story. But just to iron out the kinks and all this kind of like other stuff, I thought we would start with the story of the first and second temple. And there's a very, very cool sort of story of what happened when they tried to rebuild the second temple in, I think, about 360 AD. I've got a page that tells all about it, and I'll read it all to you. Please let me know if you like this format. Camera on, camera off. I don't know. I've got all the lights and stuff, so I may as well. We'll just do a quick shout out to everybody in the chat on YouTube. Top Prob 20, Evil Author, Ardent Party, Years, good to see you, Years, Caleb Knight, Sede Sapiente. Who else we got? We got anybody else in here? User been banned. Yeah, going to be doubly banned. Master Shake. Good to see you guys. And on Rumble, Teabagging Therapist, Wyatt's Torch. Good to see you, dudes. Human Shit Show, Mikey Bikey. Oh, I saw the people from my old show. It's lovely to see you all, guys. And on Odyssey, not many people, but that's fine. Get the slot sorted. So let us move on to the destruction of the temple. Solomon's temple, to be precise. So Basically, this was the first temple of Jerusalem that was built by Solomon. These are very, very famous Hebrew king. I believe he was like a son of. He must have been a descendant of David, the first Jewish king. If you're into Western esoteric subjects, you will know about King Solomon, because a lot of Western occultism references Solomon, the Book of Solomon, the Seal of Solomon. Solomon supposedly had this magic ring that he could use to like summon things that, did stuff for him. And it's all through sort of like Western grimoires and all that kind of like other stuff. I wouldn't recommend getting into that shit. It's like bad for you, but it is what it is. So let's you can see here the destruction of the first temple, the sort of gold, I imagine, being like stripped off and carried away. So we're gonna go with a bit of the old Encyclopedia Britannica, which doesn't have a dark mode. So Phoenician, good to see you too, mate. A lot of the fellas coming from the Friday night stream. Oh, mate, I hate making a new format. I'm all out of my zone, bros. I hope this is like good. Oh, next time remember to fucking like make YouTube work. Okay, is it gonna? There we go. Zoomed in for you. The Temple of Jerusalem, either of the two temples that were the center of worship and national identity in ancient Israel. Now, this was basically based upon the Ark of the Covenant, which you may remember from the Indiana Jones film, right? Contained the remains, the powder of the tablets that Moses brought down from Mount Ararat with the law, the 10 Commandments written upon them. There's a lot of like weird conspiracy stuff about the Ark of the Covenant. Obviously, supposedly it had to be carried on like wooden sticks and you get electrocuted if you touched it. And a lot of people are like, was it some like weird kind of, capacitor or something? I have a different view of a lot of this stuff. I kind of think that it's entirely possible that back in times before, there were just a lot more miracles around. I don't know why, but I think this sort of like modern thing that we have of just immediately disregarding, like, look at those ancient peoples, they wrote about seeing stuff in the sky. Of course, in these enlightened days, we don't believe a word. Well, why not? Right? I mean, you fucking people in the modern age, they believe all kinds of retarded shit, second or third hand. But when it comes to stuff that essentially sort of violates their scientific framing, their materialist framing fundamentally is what it is, right? This is one of the reasons why religion is sort of in the state that it is in the West, right? Everyone is basically a materialist now. That's like they don't believe. Even you even meet Christians who don't really believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. They don't believe in the resurrection. They're just like, oh, well, that's a funny story. Yeah, you know who else thinks it's a funny story? The Jays, right? I'm just saying, right? Like even the Muslims think that Jesus was a prophet. Anyway, I digress, right? But what I'm getting at is that although everyone is of the opinion that, like, none of this stuff happened and it's just all exaggeration, I think that's a bad place to start from. And other explanations should be considered, right? So the Ark was periodically moved around several sanctuaries, especially those of Shechem and Shiloh. Excuse me. After King David's capture of Jerusalem, however, the Ark was moved to that city. This action joined Israel's major religious object with the monarchy and the city itself into a central symbol of union of the Israelite tribes. As the site for a future temple, David chose Mount Moriah, or the Temple Mount, now occupied by a mosque. It's funny how shit works out. Where it was believed that Abraham had built the altar upon which to sacrifice his son Isaac. I mean, that's a messed up story, bro. That God comes along and says to Abraham, "Oh yeah, right. Like you got to sacrifice your son," and Abraham's like, I don't really want to do that. That seems a bit extreme. And, God, I mean, this is the Old Testament God, right? Says, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. Right. I will not be denied. And then, so Abraham stretches his son out on the altar, and he's about to like stab him in the heart, and God appears and is like, psych, I just wanted to see if you'd do it. I just wanted, like, I don't know, man, right? Like, it sounds a bit crazy to me, but like, what am I, the first temple was constructed during the reign of David's son Solomon. Right, Solomon was David's son. See, we're learning together, chat, right? We're learning together. And was completed in 957 BCE. Other sanctuaries retained their religious functions, however, until Hosea abolished them and established the Temple of Jerusalem as the only place of sacrifice in the kingdom of Judah. Now, it's important to remember that back in these days, the whole religion ran on animal sacrifice. There's tons of stories about this in the Old Testament. Famously, the one about, is it Cain and Abel? I think it's Cain and Abel. And one of them, Abel, sacrifices like a ram and burns it, burnt offering. The smoke goes up. God is very, very pleased, and Cain brings along like some wheat. God is not pleased, and casts him out, and all this kind of like other stuff. Artie, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming along. So the whole sort of thing ran on human sacrifice. Now, this is one of the reasons why Christians believe that the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross basically removed this need for continual animal sacrifice. Sacrificing stuff is not good juju, right? Like it's not. It's bad. It feeds bad things. The voluntary self-sacrifice of Jesus on the cross is meant to have like broken that, and thus you move into a period where you don't have to like kill animals all the time just because you said the wrong thing or picked up a teacup on Shabbat or something, right? The first temple was built as an abode for the ark and a place of assembly for the entire people. The building, therefore, was not large, but the courtyard was extensive. The temple building faced eastward. It was oblong and consisted of 3 rooms with equal width. Okay, yeah. Contained like 5 altars. Right, okay, so let's get to the actual like history part. The temple suffered at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylonia, who removed the temple treasures in 604 BCE and 597 BCE and totally destroyed the building in 587-586. This destruction and the deportation of the Jews to Babylonia in 586 and 582 were seen as fulfillments of prophecy and therefore strengthened Judaic religious beliefs and awakened the hope for the reestablishment of the independent Jewish state. That's a weird way of like looking at it. I don't know, man, right? Like, they're like, yeah, we just, we got our shit pushed in and, we're all slaves in Babylon now, but, actually like the prophets like foretold it and stuff. There's a lot of this kind of like stuff, right? However, Cyrus II, the founder of the Achaemenian dynasty of Persia and conqueror of Babylonia in 538, issued an order allowing exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. Work was completed in 515. There is no detailed plan of the second temple, which was constructed as a modest version of the original building. During the Persian and Hellenistic periods, which is 4 through 3rd century BCE, the temple generally was respected. Put on a nice suit, wore like some glasses, did its hair up. It was generally respected and in part subsidized by Judea's foreign ruler. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, however, plundered it in 169 BCE and desecrated it in 167 by commanding that sacrifices be made to Zeus on an altar built for him. This final act touched off the Hashmonean revolt, during which Judas Maccabeus cleansed and rededicated his temple. The event is celebrated in the annual festival of Hanukkah. So that's what Hanukkah is actually celebrating. This thing about Antiochus coming in and basically being like, look, I've had enough of this Hebrew nonsense. you're going to worship Zeus now, right? We're going to stick a big, statue of Zeus in the temple. As you can imagine, the Jews were very, very happy about this. No, of course they weren't. And I think this is sort of the period where the Romans and the Jews were like clashing for like ages. That eventually led to the unpleasantness, shall we say, of the wait, who was it who did the no, Herod was the leader. One of the Romans like just basically like BTFO'd like all of Jerusalem. During the Roman conquest, Pompey entered the Holy of Holies but left the temple intact. But in 54 BC, Crassus plundered the temple treasury. Of major importance was the rebuilding of the second temple begun by Herod the Great in 37 BCE and 4 CE of Judea. That's right. Okay. So, the Herodian temple was again the center of Israelite life. It was not only the focus of religious ritual, but also the repository of the Holy Scriptures and other national literature, and the meeting place of the Sanhedrin, the highest court of Jewish law during the Roman periods. The Jews love their courts. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that an ideal Jewish society is essentially ruled by the courts, a system of law that is overcomplicated and revered just for being the law. Most sort of whites and especially Christians would think of the law as something that is there for a purpose. Okay, so the prohibition against murder, for example, is there to protect people. This is different to sort of what you would call, I guess, Hebraic legalism, where it is the law itself that is worshipped and respected rather than the outcome that it is supposed to represent. There is a saying that what the Tanakh forbids, the Tanakh being the Old Testament, the Talmud, what the Tanakh prohibits, the Talmud admits. So basically, there are all these like loopholes in the law. And from the Jewish perspective, that is perfectly okay, right? That God laid down the law, but he also left loopholes in the law. This is a very, very different conception of law or religious law to the Christian conception, which is supposed to sort of like basically be based on principles and outcomes and all that other stuff, and not just sort of be designed as like a sort of like weird kind of like legalistic trap. This is very important to remember, by the way. If anyone ever, for example, mentions the Noahide laws to you, the Noahide laws are basically a set of laws that are supposed to be followed by the Gentiles. There is no likelihood or indication that those laws would apply equally to Jew and Gentile, number one. And also the application of those laws would be decided by a Jewish court. So, for example, one of the Noahide laws, I think it's the first one. I did a whole video on this actually. Sadie, do you want to post the distributed warfare video I did? You guys might want to check that out. I believe the first Noahide law is either idolatry or murder, one of the two. Okay. Well, what counts as murder, right? If you have like a Jewish ruling caste and they tell their people to go to war and exterminate that village, is that murder? Well, they'd say like, no, of course not. That's not moida, right? So you see how what to a Gentile might be these very, very simple prohibitions become much, much more complex, detailed, loopholey, and partial. Once you get a sort of court full of rabbis, like get their hands over it, and you can see this, by the way, in the Talmud. What are sort of the relatively simple declarative laws of the Tanakh, the Old Testament, in the Talmud become like, well, when is it acceptable to violate this law in this particular instance, and when is it the whole Talmud is basically rabbis sort of like arguing with each other on like how these laws should be applied. Okay, I mean, fair enough. You make simple law, someone's got to like say, well, in what cases does it apply? But that is pretty much like the entirety of the Talmud. And because because the Talmud is fundamentally disputative, right? You've got, rabbis like arguing with one another. It's very, very hard to like pin them down on exactly what they believe. Okay, so I saw this debate between wait, let me just go back to the picture while I saw this debate between Jake Shields and Adam Green. I should have had a clip of it actually, but I didn't, because I'm swinging from the fences, bros. Right, like this is what you do when you get a chill stream, right? And Adam Green is Jewish, and he's sort of defending the pro Israel pro Jewish position, and Jake Shields he's a bit of a mouth breather and a bit of an idiot, and he's trying to argue the Talmud with Adam Green. Don't argue the Talmud with the Jew. Like, you're not. What are you doing? Right? Like, you're gonna lose, right? Like, you are going to absolutely lose, right? Like, you're not. This is my point. Any position in the Talmud, you can find someone saying for or against it, which makes it very, very hard to pin down any individual position. What tends to happen in practice is that you get these sort of revered Jewish scholars like Maimonides, Rambam, he's called, and they are sort of lifted up and sort of regarded as sort of peak Jewish jurists. Now, if you're Jewish, that's all well and good. That's great. The problem is, if you're a Gentile and you read Maimonides, he says that according to his harsh interpretation of idolatry, right, which I think is like the second Noahide law, possibly the first. It's been a while. Idolatry also encompasses worshipping the cross or venerating icons, or tons of like Christians, right, like stuff, right? And according to the strict interpretation of Maimonides, you'd all have to be put to death. So you can see why, and then you're like, oh, we don't agree with Maimonides. Well, how many do? It's an unanswered question, and I think this is one of the problems that Gentiles have when they are trying to grapple with Judaism generally, particularly sort of Orthodox Judaism. Where do you start, right? Like, whose position is regarded as authentic? And I think what winds up happening is that a lot of Jews, they just, mix and match, or they sort of, they do whatever they want, and they just, when they need to be justified in doing something, they're like, well, actually, Maimonides like once said that if a bird flies overhead on the Sabbath and he lands on the Eruv and he poops on your head, then that is a blessing from God, and as a result, you don't have to grab a chicken by its feet. Like, it just, it descends into this kind of like crazy bullshit, and you can't argue with that, right? I'm sorry, you can't, right? So anyway, right, a bit of a digression there. Sorry about that. Okay, wait, where the fuck was I? Right. Okay. Back to the temple. So the temple got destroyed in 70 AD. There was a rebellion against the Romans. And I think it was Titus. I really should know this. Fucking god damn it. This is what happens when you don't do enough research. Anyway, the Romans just completely BTFO'd the Jews, to the point that it actually caused a genetic bottleneck in the Jewish population, which is one of the reasons why they have the pureblood ones anyway have such a restricted genome, allegedly, is because of this genetic bottleneck. They were almost completely wiped out. The temple was sacked and destroyed. And there was, mate, I mean, they're still kvetching about it today, to be perfectly honest. Here's some like cool pictures. This is allegedly the first temple. I mean, it looks basically like a city. It's freaking huge. Look at the size of this thing. There's a little model, let's see. So yes, they looted the temple. Now, one of the things that I did want to point out is that they did actually try and rebuild the temple in about. So the Jewish temple was destroyed in A70. Why is there so little information on this? You think they'd be like, whatever. I think it was Titus, hence the Arch of Titus, and they're still salting about it. Anyway, about 300 years later, there was an attempt apparently to rebuild the Second Temple in Jerusalem. And the project was abandoned due to a bunch of weird portents, right? So again, right, like the modern mind would be like, we don't believe in portents, right? Despite the fact that the destruction of the Second Temple was regarded by the Christians as a fulfillment of the prophecy, basically, that because the Jews killed Christ, God was going to like mess them up. And, and after they were like, see, we told you, you killed all our people, but, who's laughing now? And then, of course, the Romans started persecuting them and all that kind of other stuff. But anyway, right. History is really deep, man. It's like so deep. But my point remains. All the people in the modern world would be like, yeah, look at these people from, 360 AD talking about signs and portents that allegedly happen. We don't believe in any of that stuff. Or if they do, right, they frame it as it must be a phenomenon that we understand. You know what I mean? Why? Well, because nothing exists outside the material world. Yeah, really? Where you been, right? Anyway, I digress. So this project to rebuild the temple was apparently initiated by the pagan emperor Julian the Apostate in 363. He is called the Apostate because he was the first emperor post-Constantine to attempt to re-establish paganism in the Roman Empire. Constantine, quite famously, converted the Roman Empire to Christianity. While Christianity had not yet been made the state religion, it retained the support of the Roman government. According to the Christian sources, Julian apparently believed that the rebuilding of the temple would be the ultimate proof that Christianity was false, as Christ had predicted its destruction. Prophecy was a really big deal back in the day, right? Very, very big deal. Julian therefore provided public funds for the project, which was apparently met with enthusiasm by many Jews. Yeah, I bet. Julian's letter to the Jews doesn't explicitly state this. However, nonetheless, virtually all the Christian sources assert it. We can never know what his exact motives are. Yes, who can possibly say what his motives would be? I'm sure the Jews in Rome had nothing to do with this. We need to rebuild the temple. Those goddamn Christians, they're getting far too uppity. So all the Christian sources interpreted the failure to rebuild the temple as vindication of Christianity and Christ's messianic identity. Remember, of course, that the big beef fundamentally between Judaism and Christianity is that the Jews are still waiting for the Messiah, the Messiah, to return, and the Christians are like, yeah, he already came and you killed him. Which is why you can't reconcile this, I'm afraid, right? And this is despite all the attempts to make Christian Zionism and these weird two-headed hybrids and it says in Genesis that those who bless Israel will be blessed, no, right? You'll notice, by the way, that most of these people, they focus exclusively on the Old Testament, because if you read the New Testament, it's pretty fucking cut and dried, right? And so until they get around to censoring and rewriting the New Testament, which they would love to do, by the way, right? Love to do it, to just change a little thing here and there, right? Emphasize the role of the Romans, just remove a few passages, in the name of peace and religious dialogue, or, fucking whatever. So apparently when they tried to rebuild the temple, there was like underground fires and explosions and all of this like weird kind of like stuff happened. Now, of course, modern people would be like, yeah, there must have hit an underground gas pocket. I mean, maybe like, I mean, fucking, I don't know, right? Like, I'm just saying, right? It still looks bad. Okay. You're like, oh, we're going to rebuild the second temple. Like, what happened to all the workers? Well, they got destroyed by like mysterious fires. Like maybe it's an underground gas pocket. I don't know. So this is from Josephus in his Antiquities. As for Herod, he had spent vast sums about the cities, both without and within his own kingdom. And as he had before heard that Hyrcanus, who had been king before him, had opened David's sepulchre and taken out of it 3,000 talents of silver. That's a lot of fucking silver. And there was much greater number left behind, and indeed enough to suffice all his wants. He had for a great while an intention to make the attempt, and at this time he opened that sepulchre by night and went into it, and endeavored that it should not be at all known in the city, but took only his most faithful friends with him. As for any money, he found none, as Hyrcanus had done, but that furniture of gold and those precious goods that were laid up there, all of which he took away. However, he had a great desire to make a more diligent search and go farther in, even as far as the very bodies of David and Solomon, where 2 of his guards were slain by a flame that burst out upon those who went in, as the report was. So he was terribly affrighted and went out and built a propitiatory monument of that fright he had been in, and this of white stone at the mouth of the sepulchre, and that at great expense also. So, this is proper Indiana Jones shit right here. You know what I mean, right? Like, they come across the, Indy like finds like, where the temple was being, and like, he gets his like sidekick, and they uncover like a statue, and it's, Herod or Hyrcanus being like, he's like frozen in fright, and she's like, Indy, what does it mean? Indy's like, this would be the statue that was built after the expedition into the Temple of Doom. Yeah, whatever, right? Could the flames that consumed these men be the same flames that consumed the construction workers in AD 363? Who knows? But it struck me as a possibility. Yeah, I suppose it's a possibility, right? Like maybe it was on a gas pocket and they had like, how like in every single Indiana Jones film or whatever, or like every single video game, they've just got like eternal lights going, right? Like you'll come back to like a temple like 3,000 years later and it'll still have like working like sconces and everything, or like just candles like strewn around everywhere. And you're like, who's keeping up the lights? That's the real mystery, right? Anyway, so the pagan accounts of Emperor Julian the Apostate. Fortunately, we actually have the letter that Emperor Julian wrote to the Jewish community. In it, he asserts that he will end certain taxes which had been imposed on the Jews, and promises they will have the freedom to exercise their religion freely. Oh yeah, I'm sure that they weren't supporting him at all for that, right? At the end of the letter, he proposes a rebuilding of Jerusalem for the sake of worshipping the Jewish God. See, like that's how it was back in Rome. They had like lots of gods, and you just be like, oh yeah, we could worship the Jewish God. Imagine people saying that now. Oh yeah, the Jewish God, right? Like, I mean, unless it's on 4chan and everyone's trying to say like, oh, Jesus was Jewish actually. Yeah. Well, if Jesus was Jewish, then like, why was he against usury, and why was he like for universalism and like, for like law that didn't need like a lawyer to interpret? I'm just saying, right? It doesn't sound like any of them that I've met. What do I know, right? The various Christian accounts of the entire affair often mention that the Jews had told Julian that worshipping God according to their religion required the temple to be rebuilt. This could be why Julian proposes just that. Now, supposedly, the destruction of the temple, by the way, is one of the sort of things that led to the evolution of the Talmud, because without like the temple to do the sacrifices, and it's very very detailed stuff. It's so fucking autistic. I need the priests have to do all this like weird, like, why? I don't know why, right? So much of Jewish law is basically like that, right? Islam's a bit like that too, to be perfectly honest. why do we have to hold a chicken upside down and, pray 3 times to like the east? And then no, just do it, right? Just shut up and do it, right? So here is Julian's letter to the Jewish community from when is this? AD 363. 83, yeah, AD 331, 363, somewhere around there. In times past, by far the most burdensome thing in the yoke of your slavery has been the fact that you were subjected to unauthorized ordinances and had to contribute an untold amount of money to the accounts of the treasury. Every Jew's worst nightmare. Ever since Vespasian, about 72 CE, the Jews had been paying the Romans special Jewish taxes, like the Fiscus Judaicus. Ooh, they wouldn't have liked that. They would not have liked that at all. Of this, I used to see many instances with mine own eyes, and I have learned of more by finding the records which are preserved against you. Moreover, when a tax was about to be levied on you again, I prevented it and compelled the impiety of such obliquy to cease here. Obliquy. What does that even mean? I know I've seen that word before. Chat, can someone get me the meaning of the word obliquy? I presume it means like fuckery, basically, right? And I threw into the fire the records against you that were stored in my desk, so it is no longer possible for anyone to aim at you such a reproach of impiety. Interesting. I wonder if those records included like the money that they owed and who they owed it to. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out. Yes, there's records of impiety. My brother or cousin, Constantius, of honored memory, in whose reign 337 and 361 severe laws were enacted against the Jews, was not so much responsible for these wrongs of yours as were the men who used to frequent his table. Barbarians in mind, godless in soul. These I seized with my own hands and put them to death by thrusting them into the pit, that not even any memory of their destruction might still linger upon us. Right. So Julian, he's making himself a friend. He's making himself a friend to the Jews, right? I don't want to hear anyone in the chat like suggesting that they might have assisted his rise or anything like that. Come on. They're probably all too busy separating themselves from society, and like whatever, right? And since I wish that you should prosper more, I have admonished my brother Julius, your most venerable patriarch, that the levy which is said to exist among you, the taxes paid by world Jewry for support of the Palestinian patriarch, they wouldn't have liked that either, should be prohibited, and that no one is any longer to have the power to oppress the masses of your people by such exactions. 2,000 years later, it's still, you're oppressing your people. This shit never goes away. Someone's always fucking oppressing somebody else. So that everywhere during my reign, you may have security of mind, and in the enjoyment of peace, may offer more fervid prayers for my reign to the Most High God, the Creator, who has deigned to crown me with his own immaculate right hand. Interesting. So, the apostate, Julian, he's not saying that he was crowned by Zeus, who is, you would sort of consider. Ko-Fi. Oh man, I forgot I even had Ko-Fi. Mate. Ko-Fi. Thanks very much, Ardent. Oh yeah, I have a Ko-Fi. I should have shielded my Ko-Fi since like entropy is down. Let me see if I can like log in. We have sent you an email. God damn it. Sorry, we interrupt this stream while I get probably what will be the only super chat of this entire stream. It's cool, bro. It's cool, right? I do it for the peeps. Right. Okay, my verification code. Yes. Come on. Yes, I got my first Ko-Fi. Let's see, what do we get? Oh my God. We've got like a few of them. Holy shit. $20 from Jacob Cantrell. I appreciate the new class, Professor. I have been unable to do any work because I am so enthralled. Keep up the good work. Oh, thank you, Jacob, for $20. Thank you, mate. $5 from Mikey Bikey towards the beers of therapy. I'm gonna need it. Deadpool Kid, $5. Here's some shekels, Fist. Don't forget to call your mooish mother. She's worried you have spoken to Rabbi Shlomo. Oh, thanks, bros. Oh God, I appreciate that so much. Thank you, guys. Here, I'll drop the Ko-fi link. I really appreciate that, my dudes. Thank you, fellas. Thank you. Right. Okay, let's get back to Julian. And wait, where is it? Come on. Here we go. Right. So as I was saying, so Julian does not claim that it was Zeus who gave him the emperorship or the kingship or whatever. He's like the most high God, the creator. That sounds very mooish to me. For it is natural that men who are distracted by any anxiety should be hampered in spirit and should not have so much confidence in raising their hand to pray, but that those who are in all respects free from care should rejoice with their whole hearts and offer their suppliant prayers on behalf of my imperial office to mighty God, even to him who is able to direct my reign to the noblest ends according to my purpose. Well, that's very fucking vague. This you ought to do in order that when I have successfully concluded the war with Persia, I may rebuild by my own efforts the sacred city of Jerusalem, which was closed to the Jews since Hadrian. That's the guy, the bane of the Jays, Hadrian, right? For which for so many years you have longed to see inhabited, and may bring settlers there, and together with you may glorify the most high God therein. So Julian, he's talking very mooish. He's not like, like hail to Zeus and all this kind of like other stuff, right? True. Apparently, Christianity had sort of like been in a while in the Roman leadership, though. This was post Constantine, so I don't know. I'm just saying, right? Thus, we know for a fact that Julian the Apostate did, in fact, propose the rebuilding of Jerusalem for the sake of worshipping the Jewish God, which would necessarily imply the rebuilding of the Jewish temple. Naturally, in the pagan mind, this did not necessarily obviate their native polytheism. Josephus, for example, tells us that Alexander the Great himself visited the Jewish temple, as he did many of the temples to the gods of the various lands he conquered, right? So the sort of Roman pagan version is, you got a god for like this locale and a god for this locale, many gods, right? Like, no. So then we have an account from Ammianus Marcinellus. This pagan account of the event comes from Ammianus Marcinellus, perhaps the preeminent pagan historian of the late Roman Empire. Edward Gibbon, in his classic Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, that's on my to-read list. It's like 10 volumes. It's pretty good, though. Described Marcinellus as an accurate and faithful guide who has composed the history of his own times without indulging the prejudices and passions which usually affect the mind of a contemporary, and his account is as follows. Julian's desire to leave a monument to perpetuate the memory of his reign led him to think in particular of restoring at enormous expense the once magnificent temple at Jerusalem. So not in Rome. I think you see what I'm getting at here, right? Which, after much bitter fighting during its siege, first by Vespasian and then by Titus, had finally been stormed with great difficulty. Alippus of Antioch, who had once governed Britain as the Praetorian Prefect's deputy, was placed in charge of this project. He set to work boldly, assisted by the governor of the province, but repeated and alarming outbursts of fireballs near the foundations made it impossible to approach the spot. Some of the workmen were burnt to death, and the obstinate resistance of the fiery element caused the design to be abandoned. So, again, you could take the ancient aliens view of this, right? Like, maybe there were gas pockets, or, maybe, they were more technically advanced and they actually had like, gas pipes or something like that. And then it got destroyed and, they'd be going down. Because remember, right, like, electric lights, like, except in Egypt, allegedly, they'd be carrying torches down there. You get like passages get flooded with natural gas. Boom. But the Christian accounts concur with Marcinellus on the facts, while often including several other details his accounts lack. All of them come from men who were either alive at the time of the event or soon after. Several appeal to living witnesses. All of them speak of the event as if it were common and undisputed knowledge. So, I mean, it would be, everyone would know what the fuck was going on, right? Like, this would have been a huge construction site, right? It'd be like if they rebuilt the entirety of Canary Wharf and like thousands of people died in the construction, and then the BBC comes on and is like, no, nobody died, right? Like that's just a conspiracy theory, right? And, you know, Russian bots and all this kind of like, you know, no. All right, it was widely known. Ambrose of Milan. The most succinct detail comes from St. Ambrose of Milan, the Bishop of Milan, who played a key role in the conversion of St. Augustine. Both of them would later be declared doctors of the church. Writing to Emperor Theodosius in December 388, Ambrose speaks of the event as if it were common knowledge. Have you not heard how, when Julian had ordered the temple of Jerusalem rebuilt, those who were clearing the rubbish were burned by fire from heaven? Are you not afraid that this will happen now? In fact, you should never have given such an order as Julian would have given. Gregory Nazianzen. This is an early account from an early church father and the Archbishop of Constantinople. His account is much longer and includes an extensive theological reflection on the event. I think it's starting to get spicy here, bros. Julian was daily growing more infuriated against us, as though raising up waves by other waves. He that went mad first against himself, that trampled upon things holy, and that did despite unto the Spirit of grace. Is it more proper to call him Jeroboam or Ahab, those most wicked of the Israelites, or Pharaoh the Egyptian, or Nebuchadnezzar the Assyrian? Or combining all together, shall we name him one and the same, since he shows himself to have united in himself the vices of them all, the apostasy of Jeroboam, the bloodthirstiness of Ahab, the hardness of heart of Pharaoh, the sacrilegious acts of Nebuchadnezzar, the impiety of all put together. Okay, so he's clearly not a fan of Julian the apostate. For when he had exhausted every other resource and despised every other form of tyranny in our regard as trifling and unworthy of him, excuse me, since there was never a character so fertile in finding out and contriving mischief, he at last stirred up against the nation of the Jews, making his accomplice in his machinations their well-known credulity, as well as that hatred for us, which has smoldered in them from the very beginning, prophesying to them out of their own books and mysteries, that now was the appointed time come for them to return to their own land and to rebuild the temple and restore the reign of their hereditary institutions, thus hiding his true purpose under the mark of benevolence. Now, I'm not sure what he's saying is true purpose here, but Gregory is essentially saying that the Jews were fooled by Julian. They were desperate to get back to Phoenician. I'm starting to think he has a low opinion of Julian. I don't know why you'd think that, mate. Like, he only compares him to like 4 or 5 like famous bloodthirsty tyrants. Come on, like who hasn't done that? I do that like frequently before breakfast, bro. So he's basically saying that he gulled the Jews, right? Now, personally, I would be very, very cautious trying to win a gulling competition with the Jays personally, right? You might walk away from that encounter being like, ha ha, oh, I scammed them, and then you find out like later that in fact it is you who have been scammed. Just saying, right? Like, and when he had formed this plan and made them believe it, for whatever suits one's wishes is a ready engine for deceiving people. Well, that's really fucking true. That's that is a boss quote right there. Whatever suits one's wishes is a ready engine for deceiving people. I should have that on a fucking t-shirt. They began to debate about rebuilding the temple, and in large number with great zeal set about the work. For the partisans of the other side report that not only did their women strip off all their personal ornaments and contributed towards the work and operations, but even carried away the rubbish in the laps of their gowns, sparing neither the so precious clothes nor yet the tenderness of their own limbs, for they believed they were doing a pious action and regarded everything of less moment than the work in hand. Fuck. Now, I'll cover this in later episodes, but one of the characteristics about the Jewish people through history. Not just them, right? Like it's not like mass hysteria is not a feature of other groups, but right, if you study Jewish history, there are these points in history where they get all really like obsessed with an idea, right? Like just it might be that the current sort of like tikkun olam thing in like the last 60, 80 years has been like this, right? They'll get like all obsessed with this idea, right? When Sabbatai Zevi came and declared himself the Messiah, at least half of the Jewish population claimed that he was the Messiah become, and they, like we're abandoning all of our rituals and all of our calendar, and we don't have to milk the cows or repair the fences because the Messiah has come. All of this kind of like what we would call, I guess, a mass religious. I hesitate to say delusion, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like a mass religious psychosis kind of thing, right? So all the ordinary people, like, yes, we're going to rebuild the temple, right? We're going to give all of our jewelry. Why do I get the feeling that certain Jews made a lot of money, sort of enabling this process? I don't. I'm just saying, bros. I'm just saying, right? It sounds to me like, oh yes, you give us all your jewelry, you'll be helping God. Anyway, whatever. But they are, but they being driven against one another as though by a furious blast of wind and sudden heaving of the earth, some rushed to one of the neighboring sacred places to pray for mercy. Others, as is wont to happen in such cases, made use of what came to hand to shelter themselves. Others were carried away blindly by the panic and struck against those who were running up to see what was the matter. So a furious blast of wind and a sudden heaving of the earth. That sounds like an explosion. Underground gas pocket, maybe divine intervention. Who can say? Who can say? Who can say? There are some who say that neither did the sacred place admit them, but that when they approached the folding doors that stood wide open, on coming up to them, they found them closed in their faces by an unseen and invisible power, which works wonders of the sort for the confusion of the impious and the saving of the godly. But what all people nowadays report and believe is that when they were forcing their way and struggling about the entrance, a flame issued forth from the sacred place and stopped them. And some it burnt up and consumed, so that a fate befell them similar to the disaster of the people of Sodom, or the miracle about Nadab and Abiud, who offered incense and perished so strangely, whilst others it maimed in the principal parts of the body, and so left them for a living monument of God's threatening and wrath against sinners. Bro. So the next time, by the way, like someone tells you that, right, like, the big and only feature of Christianity is like how you've basically got to like give everyone like all your stuff and never be nasty to anyone and like let them like take all your shit. Yeah, there's an entire other side to Christianity, man, where they're just like, yeah, fuck those heathens. Like, yes, you've been maimed by God as a living monument. Fucking hell, man. Oh, dude. Yes, God is upset with the temple. Yes, well said, Phoenician. Yes, yeah, quite. Such then was this event, and yet let no one disbelieve unless he doubts likewise the other mighty works of God. But what is yet more strange and more conspicuous, there stood in the heavens a light circumscribing a cross, and that which before on earth was contemned. Is that meant to be condemned? Condemned by the ungodly, both in figure and in name, is now exhibited in heaven, and is made by God a trophy of his victory over the impious, a trophy more lofty than any other. Get wrecked! That's what he's saying, right? Our God's like, so boss, not only did he maim you, right, as a living testament to his power, but there was like an actual like glowing cross in heaven. Get wrecked. Oh no, man, right? Like Christianity is just about being nice to people. I think you should maybe read some fucking history. Just saying, right? Like, maybe if only there was like a podcast that did that. Oh wait. Oh god damn it. Sorry, hang on, just give me a second. I'll just reload the Ko-Fi. Thanks for the Ko-Fi, bros. Oh, $5 from Ardent Party. Inaugurating the first history class with Professor Fist. Oh, thanks very much, Ardent. I appreciate that, mate. Okay, so back to this. What will those gentlemen say of these events, they who are wise, as this world goes and make a fine show of their own cause, smoothing down their flowing beard and trailing before our eyes that elegant philosophic mantle? Reply to me for thyself, thou writer of long discourses, that dost compose incredible stories and gapest up at the skies, telling lies about things celestial and weaving out the movements of the stars, people's nativities and predictions of the future. Yeah, fuck astrologers, man. Fucking. Tell me of those stars of thine, the Ariadne's crown, the Bernice's hair, the lascivious swan. Yeah, you gotta watch those swans, mate. clapping those swan cheeks. The violent bull, or if thou pleasest, tell me of thine Ophiuchus. How do you spell that? How do you pronounce that constellation? Ophiuchus. Or of thy Capricorn, or of thy Lion, or all the rest that thou hast discovered for a bad end and made them into gods in constellations. Where dost thou find this cycle in thy science? Where is your science now? BTFO. Where the star of that old moved towards Bethlehem out of the east, that leader and introducer of thine own wise men. I too have something to tell from the heavens. That star declared the presence of Christ. This crown is that of the victory of Christ. Get wrecked! This is so fucking based. Thus much is taken from things celestial, and sympathizing with our fortunes in accordance with the mighty harmony and disposition of the universe. What follows, let the psalm finish for me, because thou hast cast down cities, namely those ancient ones, for the very same acts of impiety in the middle of the very same offenses against us, some thereof overwhelmed by floods, others swallowed up by earthquake, so that one is pretty nearly able to apply the remainder. The memorial of them hath perished with a sound and a destruction noised abroad. For such has been their fall, and such their ruin, also of those their neighbors who took the most delight in their impiety, so that a very long time were necessary to them for their restoration, even if anyone should have the boldness to undertake it. Get wrecked, pagans. Oh, dude. Did they have like fascism in like 300 AD? I don't even know, bro. It sounds a bit fashy to me. Was it then only heaven and earth? And did not air likewise give a sign on that occasion, and was hallowed with the badges of the passion? Let those who were spectators and partakers of that prodigy exhibit their garments, which to the present time are stamped with the brand marks of the cross. Yeah, apparently that was like another thing. Apparently, again in the stories, like crosses began like appearing on on the clothing of the Jews redoing the temple. Ooh, they wouldn't have liked that, mate. Wouldn't have liked that. Mate, sounds a bit Christian supremacist to me. For at the very moment that anyone, either of our own brethren or of the outsiders, was telling the event or hearing it told by others, he beheld the miracle happening in his own case or to his neighbor, all being spotted with stars, or beholding the other so marked upon his clothes in a manner more variegated than could have been done by any artificial work of the loom or elaborate painting. What is the result of this? Such great consternation at the spectacle that nearly all, as by one signal and with one voice, invoked the God of the Christians, and propitiated him with many praises and supplications. You'll notice in this that the God of the Christians and the God of the Jews is not the same God. Just saying. I think that was officially declared like a heresy. Is it the like Marcionite heresy? I can't remember, but just saying, right? Everyone's like, oh, the Christians, we worship the same God. Do we now? Really? Source. I need to put on my serious hat. Source. Anyone have a source for that? Whilst many, without further delay, but at the moment of the occurrence, ran up to our priests and besought them earnestly that they might be made members of the church, being sanctified by the holy baptism, for they had been saved by means of their fright. So he's implying that a lot of these people basically converted to Christianity after this, Now, I mean, like, to be fair, I don't know, maybe like stuff like splashed on their clothes, like, I don't know, petroleum. I don't know, like John Chrysostom. what a Chad. If you are in the Orthodox Church, you will know John Chrysostom. I think he actually was the guy who wrote the Divine Liturgy, right? The OG of Orthodoxy. What a based dude. He made an account. Apparently, he was around at this time, 349, 407. So this is what I mean, right? Like, this just could have been a period where like miracles were like, much more sort of like around. Everyone just assumes they just made it up. You don't know that. You don't know that. You just assume that because it agrees with your materialism. Even in our generation, in the instance of him who surpassed all in ungodliness, I mean Julian, many strange things happened. Thus, when the Jews were attempting to raise up again the temple at Jerusalem, fire burst out from the foundations and utterly hindered them all. And when both his treasurer and his uncle and namesake made these sacred vessels the subject of their open indolence, the one was eaten with worms and gave up the ghost, and the other burst asunder in his midst. Bro. Literally exploded. Wait, we have another super chat? Is that true? Chat, is that true that we have a super chat? Is it on the Ko-Fi? On Rumble. Okay. Thank you very much. From Steel Big Time for $5. Thank you very, very much. Big time. My fellow brother in Christ, may the Lord have mercy and forgive our sinners. Yes, indeed. Indeed. Nice one. Thanks, Big Time. I appreciate the prayer. Right, I really got to keep up with the super chats. It's cool, right? The first pancake, the first stream, it's always a bit like crazy. So John Chrysostom is basically saying that these two guys who blasphemed, one was eaten with worms and the other like literally exploded. Mate, that would definitely get a few people converting. Is all I'm saying. That's like that, that's like some Lovecraftian shit there. You know what I mean, right? Like, oh yeah, did you hear Bob like blasphemed the Christian God and then like exploded in the marketplace? You're like, bruh, seriously. Moreover, the fountains failing when sacrifices were made there, and the entrance of the famine into cities together with the emperor himself was a very great sign. Okay, so he's basically saying that as Emperor Julian traveled around, crops like started failing and there was famine and disease like followed him like a bad smell. For it is usual with God to do such things when evils are multiplied, and he sees his own people afflicted and their adversaries greatly intoxicated with their dominion over them, then to display his own power, which he did also in Persia with respect to the Jews. Oh, there you go. Could use a bit of that sort of like old time religion. Now I'm just saying, right? How much time we got? We're gone for an hour. It's cool. We got another 25 minutes. Socrates Scholasticus, another historian, a 4th or 5th century church historian. He was a contemporary of Theodoret and Sozomen, I have not heard of, who were also church historians. His account of the event is contained in his ecclesiastical history. The emperor, in another attempt to molest the Christians, exposed his superstition. Being fond of sacrificing, he not only himself delighted in the blood of victims, but considered it an indignity offered to him if others did not do likewise. All right, okay, so he sounds like a Caligula kind of like guy, basically. And as he found but few persons of this stamp, he sent for the Jews and inquired of them why they abstained from sacrificing, since the law of Moses enjoined it. On their replying that it was not permitted them to do this in any other place than Jerusalem, he immediately ordered them to rebuild Solomon's temple. So this guy's basically saying that Julian was really, really fond of like sacrificing people, but the people around him were just like, nah, we're not really into that. And he's like, hey, you know who's he's fond of sacrificing? Bring me the Jews. I can hang out with them and like sacrifice some stuff. Fucking hell, dude. And they're like, oh yeah, you got to rebuild the temple. And he's like, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever. As long as I've got like, some people to like do some sacrificing with. Meanwhile, he himself proceeded on his expedition against the Persians. The Jews, who had been long desirous of obtaining a favorable opportunity for rearing their temple afresh, in order that they might therein offer sacrifice, applied themselves very vigorously to the work. Moreover, they conducted themselves with great insolence towards the Christians and threatened to do them as much mischief as they themselves had suffered from the Romans. Yeah, I bet. The emperor, having ordered that the expenses of this structure should be defrayed out of the public treasury, of course, all things were soon provided, such as timber and stone, burnt brick, clay, lime, and all other materials necessary for building. On this occasion, Cyril, Bishop of Jerusalem, called to mind the prophecy of Daniel, which Christ also in the Holy Gospels has confirmed and predicted in the presence of many persons, that the time had indeed come in which one stone should not be left upon another in that temple, but that the Savior's prophetic declaration should still have its full accomplishment. You got to remember, man, this is only a couple of 100 years after the crucifixion. So, it's very, very fresh. Like, everyone's like, oh, yeah, remember that thing. Like, granddad was still alive when Jesus was crucified. Such were the bishop's word. And on the night following, a mighty earthquake tore up the stones of the old foundations of the temple and dispersed them all together with the adjacent edifices. Terror consequently possessed the Jews on account of the event, and the report of it brought many to the spot who resided at a great distance. When, therefore, a vast multitude was assembled, another prodigy took place. Fire came down from heaven and consumed all the builders' tools, so that the flames were seen preying upon mallets, irons to smooth and polish stones, saws, hatchets, adzes, and in short, all the various implements which the workmen had procured as necessary for the undertaking. And the fire continued burning among these things for a whole day. Okay. The Jews indeed were in the greatest possible alarm. I'm not fucking surprised. Imagine fucking seeing that, right? And unwillingly confessed Christ, calling him God, yet they did not do his will. Yeah, where have I heard that before? But influenced by inveterate prepossessions, they still clung to Judaism. Even a third miracle, which afterwards happened, failed to lead them to a belief of the truth. For the next night, luminous impressions of a cross appeared imprinted on their garments, which at daybreak they in vain attempted to rub or wash out. They were therefore, as the apostle says, and cast away the good which they had in their hands, and thus was the temple, instead of being rebuilt, at that time wholly overthrown. Bro, fucking these are crazy, man. Church history goes hard. I gotta get more into this. So this is from Theodoret, who is a historian but also a bishop and a theologian. Julian, who made of his soul a home of destroying demons. Good thing our politicians don't do that today, right? Went his Corybantic way. I don't know how to make it. I'm pretty good in English, but damn, Corybantic. Ever raging against true religion, he accordingly now armed the Jews too against the believers in Christ. He began by inquiring of some whom he got together why, though their law imposed on them the duty of sacrifices, they offered none. He's just like, I just need some people to sacrifice some stuff with. I don't care who they are. On their reply that their worship was limited to one particular spot, this enemy of God immediately gave directions for the re-erection of the destroyed temple, supposing in his vanity that he could falsify the prediction of the Lord, of which in reality he exhibited the truth. The Jews heard his words with delight and made known his orders to their countrymen throughout the world. They came with haste from all directions, contributing alike money and enthusiasm for the work, and the emperor made all the provisions that he could, less from the pride of munificence than from hostility to the truth. He dispatched also as governor a fit man to carry out his impious orders. It is said they made mattocks, shovels, and baskets of silver. When they had begun to dig and carry out the earth, a vast multitude of them went on with the work all day. But by night, the earth which had been carried all away shifted back from the ravine of its own accord. They destroyed, moreover, the remains of the former construction with the intention of building everything up afresh. But when they had got together thousands of bushels of chalk and lime, all of a sudden a violent gale blew, and storms, tempests, and whirlwinds scattered everything far and wide. They still went on in their madness. Nor were they brought to their senses by the divine long-suffering. Then first came a great earthquake, fit to strike terror into the hearts of men, quite ignorant of God's dealings. And when they still were not awed, fire running from the excavated foundations burnt up most of the diggers and put the rest to flight. Moreover, when a large number of men were sleeping at night in an adjacent building, it suddenly fell down, roof and all, and crushed the whole of them. On that night, and also on the following night, the sign of the cross of salvation was seen brightly shining in the sky, and the very garments of the Jews were filled with crosses, not bright but black. When God's enemies saw these things in terror at the heaven-sent plagues, they fled and made their way home, confessing the Godhead of him who had been crucified by their fathers. Julian heard of these events, for they were repeated by everyone, but like Pharaoh, he hardened his heart. $5 from Double Mumbler. This just makes me realize that the romanticization of Greek, Norse, Celtic mythology is just to obfuscate from the stories of Christianity. Yeah, man. Like, the stories of Christianity are fucking based as hell. Like, they are really, like, they never, ever teach this stuff anymore, right? Like, oh, you know, we've literally been around for, like, 2,000 years. What happened? Oh, nothing much. Nothing much, right? Like, just, wouldn't you rather be a pagan or a Christian Zionist? Like, yeah, they hate this shit, mate. And you can fucking see why, right? Okay, is that all? Is that all the super chats? Wait, hang on. Is that yeah? Okay, just doubly checking. The final account comes from Sozomen, a 5th century church historian. So this is like 150 years afterwards. Though the emperor hated and oppressed the Christians, he manifested benevolence and humanity toward the Jews. He wrote to the Jewish patriarchs and leaders, as well as to the people, requesting them to pray for him and for the prosperity of the empire. In taking this step, he was not actuated, I am convinced, by any respect for their religion, for he was aware that it is, so to speak, the mother of the Christian religion, and he knew that both religions rest upon the authority of the patriarchs and the prophets, but he thought to grieve the Christians by favoring the Jews, who are their most inveterate enemies. Really? That sounds a little anti-citrus to me, mate. Someone needs to go back in time and find this guy, Sozomen, and, cancel him. Hey, someone call the ADL, right? I'm sure they got a time machine. What do you want to say? It's history, right? But perhaps he also calculated upon persuading the Jews to embrace paganism and sacrifices, for they were not only acquainted with the mere letter of scripture and could not, like the Christians and a few of the wisest among the Hebrews, discern the hidden meaning. Okay, so this is an interesting angle. Julian's basically saying, look, I really want the sacrifices. I just love killing stuff, right? Like, the blood, it's totally awesome. Maybe we could like revive paganism and get the Jews to come over. They like sacrifices. We like sacrifices, so much in common, right? Like, we could revive pagan Rome. Events proved that this was his real motive, for he sent for some of the chiefs of the race, and that's not allowed to say that. Which race is he talking about? That's anti-citrus. And exhorted them to return to the observance of the laws of Moses and the customs of their fathers. On their replying that because the temple in Jerusalem was overturned, it was neither lawful nor ancestral to do this in another place than the metropolis out of which they had been cast, he gave them public money, commanded them to rebuild the temple and practice the cult similar to that of their ancestors by sacrificing after the ancient way. The Jews entered upon this undertaking without reflecting that, according to the prediction of the holy prophets, it could not be accomplished. They sought for the most skillful artisans, collected materials, cleared the ground, and entered so earnestly upon the task that even the women carried heaps of earth and brought their necklaces and other female ornaments toward defraying the expense. The emperor, the other pagans, and all the Jews regarded every other undertaking as secondary in importance to this. Interesting. So this became sort of the most important thing in the Roman Empire at that time. Yeah. Fortunately, I can't think of any other sort of like modern parallel to this, where all of a sudden, like the aims of a small elite allying with like a certain ethnic group suddenly become the most important thing of all society, and they open the government coffers to pay for it. And a good thing too. Because if I could think of a a modern example, that would be terrible, right? Although the pagans were not well disposed towards the Jews, yet they assisted them in this enterprise because they reckoned upon its ultimate success and hoped by this means to falsify the prophecies of Christ. Yeah, you're going to be waiting a while, mate. You're going to be fucking BTFO. You have been maimed as a testament. Besides this motive, the Jews themselves were impelled by the consideration that the time had arrived for rebuilding their temple. Interesting. I wonder how they justified that. I wonder if they had some rabbi who was like, I have consulted the holy dreidel, and it is most definitely the time according to the stars and the animal guts and all that kind of other stuff. When they had removed the ruins of the former building, they dug up the ground and cleared away its foundation. It is said that on the following day, when they were about to lay the first foundation, a great earthquake occurred, and by the violent agitation of the earth, stones were thrown up from the depths, by which those of the Jews who were engaged in the work were wounded, as likewise those who were merely looking on. Does sound like an explosion. The houses and public porticos near the site of the temple in which they had diverted themselves were suddenly thrown down. Many were caught thereby. Some perished immediately. Others were found half dead and mutilated of hands and legs, and others were injured in other parts of the body. So, explosion, earthquake, gas pocket, divine intervention. When God caused the earthquake to cease, the workmen who survived again returned to their task, partly because such was the edict of the emperor, and partly because they were themselves interested in the undertaking. Men often, in endeavoring to gratify their own passions, seek what is injurious to them. Yeah. Well, that's a bit of wisdom there too. That should be on a t-shirt as well. They reject what would be truly advantageous and are deluded by the idea that nothing is really useful except what is agreeable to them. When once led astray by this error, they are no longer able to act in a manner conducive to their own interests or to take warning by the calamities which are visited upon them. Yeah, I feel like the West in general should maybe like get a t-shirt with that phrase on it. I'm just saying, bros, right? The Jews, I believe, were in just this state, for instead of regarding this unexpected earthquake as a manifest indication that God was opposed to the re-erection of their temple, they proceeded to recommence the work. But all parties relate that they had scarcely returned to the undertaking when fire burst suddenly from the foundations of the temple and consumed all of the workmen. This fact is fearlessly stated and believed by all. The only discrepancy in the narrative is that some maintain that flame burst from the interior of the temple as the workmen were striving to force an entrance, while others say that the fire proceeded directly from the earth. In whichever way the phenomena might have occurred, it is equally wonderful. Get wrecked! Get wrecked! That's what you get for denying Christ. I thought Christianity was just like when you were like kind to people. Nuh-uh. Nuh-uh. Teabagging Therapist merch store. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. I should get a merch store up. I feel like some cool medieval Christian or like old school Christian quotes on t-shirts would be good. Let me know, chat, if that seems like something you'd be into. I got to try and find like a place that does like decent quality t-shirts, because like most of them are just terrible quality. I don't want to sell like crap. A more tangible and still more extraordinary prodigy ensued. Suddenly, the sign of the cross appeared spontaneously on the garments of the persons engaged in the undertaking. These crosses were disposed like stars and appeared the work of art. Many were hence led to confess that Christ is God and that the rebuilding of the temple was not pleasing to him. Others presented themselves in the church, were initiated, and besought Christ with hymns and supplications to pardon their transgression. If anyone does not feel disposed to believe my narrative, let him go and be convinced by those who heard the facts I have related from the eyewitnesses of them, for they are still alive. Let him inquire also of the Jews and pagans who left the work in an incomplete state, or who, to speak more accurately, were able to commence it. So there you go. Let me see. Conclusion. So did this event happen? I don't know. It seems so cool, honestly. It seems strange to think that an event spoken of so widely by both pagan and Christian sources who were alive either when it happened or soon after didn't happen, obviously. It seems even more strange that they speak of it as common knowledge, appeal to living witnesses, and, as in the case of Ambrose, speak to a Roman emperor as if he also knew, or should have known, of the event. I find that significant because if there was anyone who would be in a position to know, it'd be the emperor whose reign was soon after the reign of Julian the Apostate, and thus would have had access to the public records of such an event, given that Julian apparently appointed a Roman official over the project and issued an edict concerning it. So there'd be paperwork, there'd be tons of records, like all the money that got spent, all the stone, all the lime, all that kind of stuff. Excuse me, bro. Excuse me. Assuming that such an event did indeed take place, which seems to be a reasonable conclusion, it is obvious why many Christian leaders of that time would have interpreted it the way that they did. They would have seen it as further evidence of God's repudiation of Judaism and the veracity of the Christian faith. Were these accounts embellished? What I have not been able to find is a Jewish source confirming the event. Yeah, well, why would they write something like that down? Right? Like that is not what they want to put in their holy book, like at all. That does not necessarily mean it didn't occur. For example, there are no Egyptian accounts of the Exodus. Such things sometimes go unrecorded, given that they are examples of defeat, oppression, or failure. Again, absent the discovery of a new source, we'll never know for sure. In any event, this is a fascinating historical episode to contemplate from many different angles. So there you go. The attempted rebuilding of the Second Temple in 380 something. When the hell was that? 363 AD. That's what happens when you try and rebuild the temple. Makes me wonder, what would actually happen if they tried to rebuild the temple again in Jerusalem. Obviously, there's like a mosque on it, and people are like, it'd start like World War III, and like, mate, it'd be crazy if they tried and like literally the whole site got like razed and crosses start appearing everywhere, and all the Jews are like, oh god damn it, it must be like must be a conspiracy theory, a natural phenomena. Fucking, whatever. So I thought you guys would find that interesting. I'm going to be doing these every week. I've got a sort of like an arc planned out. I want to sort of, do, sort of firstly the origins of the Ashkenazi, because, they're sort of like very much in the news at the moment, which basically, as far as I can tell, appears to be, as I was saying, like Ukraine, northern Turkey. So, do Khazaria, and then, maybe go on to some other sort of like stuff like around Europe and what happened. We can cover the Sabbateans, Sabbatai Zevi, the various things that happened in various European countries. Fascinating stories. So yes, thank you so much for coming along, bros. Let's just say thank you to all the people who did the Ko-Fi. Thank you so much, bros. I really appreciate you found the Ko-Fi link. God bless you all. Ardent Party, Jacob Cantrell, and Mikey Bikey. Thanks, bros. No, wait, is that all of them? I don't want to like miss anyone. Deadpool Kid. And I think that's it. Yeah, the last ones are from like ages ago. Right. So yes, come along next Monday, same time, same place. Let's just say hello to everyone in the chat. YouTube, Top Rob 20, Ardent Party, Phoenician, Rhetorically Defective, Gaius Plinius Secundus. Yes, of course. Great to see you. Yes, Caleb Knight. Who else we got? Sunny Jim. Good to see you, mate. Seti Sapiente. Master Shake. Who else we got? Attack Dog. Double Mumble. Who else we got? Hypatia Stanhope. Good to see you. Big Time, of course. Mikey Bikey again. Jack B. Nimble. King Solo Wings. Kunstler Kenneth Krieg. Oh, mate, everybody's in the chat. It's lovely to see you all, guys. Really, Cheese. I think that's Cheese. Good to see you, Cheese. I think that's everyone on YouTube, on Rumble. Chi Banging Therapist, White's Torch, 14 Skeets on a Cheat. It's a great name. Big Time Again. I think that's everybody. And on Odyssey, Highland Fall, Evola 19. Good to see you guys. Right. Okay, so I will be back next week. Have a great night, everyone. And God bless you all. I'll see you later. Bye.